NOBS Job Search Advice Radio, episode 2241. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome! Welcome to another episode of the show. And before I get going and tell you about the show, I just want to point out to you something I messaged you about earlier in the week. Next week, I'm involved with a summit that's designed to help people break through the glass ceiling. And targeted toward women, a lot of great material for men. Sign up. It's completely free. All you have to do is go to thebiggamehunter.us/breakthrough to sign up. There are daily drawings, or I should say daily gifts that will be available to you as part of the summit. So sign up. You don't have to attend live. They'll send you links to videos once you've signed up. I should say videos, and I think that's videos primarily. And today's show is one where I interviewed Diana Alt about being the boss of your career. I use different language for it in my work, but I like hers as well. Being the boss of your career. Hope you enjoyed today's show, and I hope you give it an honest review wherever you listen to it. And again, go to thebiggamehunter.us/breakthrough. It is free to attend, and we'll be back in just one moment. In most podcast services, they only keep the most recent 300 shows in the feed. As such, try going to the link that I'll have here for the original NOBS Job Search Advice Radio. All the shows that I've had prior to October 2020, when I transferred them over to Anchor. And you'll find a ton of great material. After all, I've done over 2,100 shows. There's 300 in the feed, and I'm doing 5 a week, so you can do the math. I've got a number of shows in this feed for Anchor, and on Anchor in this other feed, you'll see all the others. So I hope you find it helpful, and besides, it's going to help you get a job faster so you don't have to listen to my voice all the time. The plow. Yep. Sorry, I felt like I had to translate that.
I'm glad you did that, because I grew up, my parents and grandparents for generations back, they were farmers, so I know a plow hoist analogy, but thanks for clarifying that.
I'm an urbanite. I know there are other urbanites who watch or listen. Yeah. I got to make sure that they understand.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so glad you did that. But you have to understand first off, do you even know you're on a conveyor belt? Second off, is it a problem? And then if a person is starting to know that they're on a conveyor belt and starting to sense that something's not right, then I start asking them questions about what's going on with their work and how it fits into their life. And this can be really casual. I think very often people think that coaches have this magic bag. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. We're live, guys. I thought I had that on silent. My apologies. So we think sometimes that coaches have these magic, really hard questions that are complicated, and they're really not. They're really not. We have a lot of things where we just say things like, tell me more, or the immortal Dr. Phil question of how is that working for you? But what I like to do when I'm working with people that know that something's maybe not quite right with the conveyor belt is ask them questions that align to what I call the 4 pillars of an ideal job. And I don't...
The 4 pillars of an ideal job?
Yes, there are 4, Jeff. 4. Some people might say 5. Some people might say 3. I think there's 4. Okay. And I sometimes introduce the pillars, and I sometimes just talk to people. And I actually find that it's more effective to just talk to people instead of positioning myself as this expert with 4 pillars, and I know more than you do because I have some pillars. I ask questions about, you know what I'm talking about, Jeff. You know this game. You've been in the coaching racket for a long time. The 4 areas or pillars or whatever you want to call them of an ideal job are: number 1, is it the right work for you? Number 2, are you working for the right leaders for you? Number 3, are you working in the right culture for you? And number 4, are you working in the right environment for you? So all of those things, if they are right, that's as close as you're ever going to come to an ideal job.
So I'm curious, somebody interrupts you here for a second.
Absolutely.
Of the 4, which one do people tend to give short shrift to most often?
Culture.
I knew that. I knew you were going to say that.
They give the number 1 is culture, and the number 2 is the work. Because people confuse. So the right work for you, let's unpack that for a second, and then we can hit like culture. I also get a lot of questions about the difference between culture and environment, and they're definitely different. Yeah. So I used to have 3 pillars, and then I split them up because I realized they were different. The right work for you is work that uses your strengths and talents, uses skills you actually enjoy using, and is enough challenge for you and where you're at in your life and your career. And so the first 2 that I like to distinguish between your strengths and talents and skills, because what happens with a lot of people is that they are trained in a certain set of skills or a domain. Maybe they're an accountant. They crush being an accountant. They've worked their way up to being a controller. They are good at all the things that are involved in accounting so that they can be a controller. But their talents and strengths may be more in the team building or strategic thinking or things like that. And their jobs sometimes don't align up depending on how their role is defined. There's a difference between skills you're good at and talents you have. And there's also a difference between skills you're good at and skills you like using. So I like to pick apart with people, which type of skills are you using? Are you using ones that you're just good at and you're used to using, or are you using ones that you're enjoying using? The best is when you get a little bit of both. So, and then the strengths and talents I like to explore. I actually use Clifton Strengths assessment in my practice. A lot of career coaches use a million assessments, and I don't like that. I have one that I use because we let the man, the boss, the company, the society tell us what we should be. And that's not always the same as the truth. In my example, I actually spent a lot of years in jobs where I was, project management, execution focused, get stuff done. I can do that. I'm analytical and I can get stuff done, and I can get a team to work together to do that. And I got told for years, you're not a strategic thinker. And then I worked for a boss that actually recognized that I was a strategic thinker. And I also got more and more into Clifton Strengths at that time, revisited all my assessments and figured out 6 of my top 10 strengths are in strategic thinking. So I had been for 20 years letting people tell me that I'm not good at strategic thinking when it's actually my top area of skill, because it was not convenient for my company to use me in a strategic role. It was convenient for them to use me in an execution role because I was good there. So I love to pick apart those things with people.
Yeah, and I'll just simply say, for so many folks, you outsource your thinking to your employer.
Yes. Oh.
And outsourcing, whatever you may
Awful.
think of it, outsourcing your life and your career and the decisions involved with it to someone else. I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to opinions, but it's your choice. And It's up to you to make decisions.
Yes.
Not put yourself in the position where your employer is deciding, we need you in such and such role. And, even though you hate that kind of work, we need a body in that seat.
Yes. Yeah. And it's actually the hardest when you're really great at it. And then somehow you become viewed as irreplaceable because you're so excellent at those skills, and you can't get promoted to save your life. So, but your point about outsourcing responsibility for your life is really good one. And I have a friend who might be an interesting guest for you on your show. His name is Andy Storch, and he wrote a book last year called Own Your Career, Own Your Life. And I was talking to him very early, like he didn't even have the full draft done, but he knew the title. He knew the mission of what the book was going to be. And I said, buddy, I love you, but I'm so mad because you took the brand that is just the best brand to say how I feel about this process. So you can't outsource your life. You just can't, and expect to live a cool one most of the time. So
Well, it's not a cool one. You know you better than anyone else.
yes.
And
Yes.
what happens is, for a lot of folks, they get mixed messages from all over the place. Like you were talking about yourself. Everyone's got an opinion.
Yep.
And, they have limited information, but they have opinions.
Well, and they have an agenda, and their agenda, your company or your boss,
or your friends,
their agenda is very rarely, let's make sure Jeff can have the most awesome life possible. Like that's not the agenda of the director of accounting that you work for.
No.
The agenda of the director of accounting is to have the best accounting team to serve the company, which is a whole different ball of wax. And there's merit to that. Like there's a place for that. And I respect people that follow their mission as managers in that way, but that's not how you manage your life.
No. So we're trying to get people to get off the conveyor belt here. And we've been at a lot of different places already. And we've been talking about the sacred 4 pillars. I'm making them sacred right now.
I like the sacred. I might steal that.
The sacred. I have to have reverb with it. The sacred 4 pillars. And we've spoken about work that involves your talents and your personality. It fits you. It suits you.
Yes. Yes.
You didn't use those words. I like suits.
I like them. Suit is a good word.
Yeah. And it fits like a good suit does. And then you were talking about the culture of the organization. Now, I'm gonna do a setup here on my question.
Absolutely. I can't wait for this.
So I worked in search for a long time. And it didn't take me long to figure out the candidates were on good behavior. But it took me a while to figure out that my institutional customers were also on good behavior.
Yeah.
And I realized one day that I'd never heard of an employer ever, and this goes on to this day, I never heard of an employer say to a job seeker, I've got a problem here. And I've inherited a team, they're absolute imbeciles. And my predecessor got fired, and so did hers. The last 4 people who sat in the chair that you're going to be sitting in, they will quit within 4 months. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that my butt is on the line. I need to hire someone who's going to save it. They never say that, even though it may be true. Instead, they all have happy smile button faces.
Yes. The last 4 people left within 4 months because they just happened to get better opportunities immediately.
Anything would have been better. A funeral home director would have been a better opportunity than this one. So given the fact that you're going to be on good behavior, and so are they, how do you recognize the right culture since everyone's conning one another?
Well, one of the top things you have to do, and this is hard work, but actually digging into this stuff is hard work. I like to try to talk to people that aren't in the organization as much as possible, that are in the organization or recently left people outside the interview cycle. That's what I meant. I fumbled over that a little bit. But if I'm going to interview at Acme Corporation on Friday, and I'm going through a process there, of course, I have a few questions that I like to ask people in an interview. I'll get to that in a second. But I also like to go find people that, number one, work there in peer roles now and ask them questions. Ideally, people you've known in the past through your network, but I'm not scared to message a stranger on LinkedIn and say, hey, I see that you're a marketing coordinator at Acme Corporation. I'm interviewing to be a senior marketing coordinator at Acme Corporation. What can you tell me about it? And then also look for people that left recently. Same thing, is ask them question. Hey, I noticed you used to work at Acme Corporation. I'm interviewing there. I'm interested to learn a little bit more from somebody that, was there for a while. What can you tell me? So those are some things, and people will tell you more than you realize. Even current employees will tell you more than you realize. Now, one thing that's really important is to know what kind of culture you like and what kind of environment you like. And I mentioned earlier that they're different. I mostly talk about culture around, number one, are people treated like human beings with dignity? And number two, are the values of the company actually expressed in action from the top down? Everybody loves to say our values are integrity and teamwork and all that stuff. That's great. It's painted on the conference room wall. But
And
in
they
an
used to say that
interview,
at Enron too.
right, exactly. And so I like a job that I worked a while ago. I was in a company that had some values that I really liked on paper, and me and my peers worked according to those values. And then I had a direct boss for a while that worked according to those values. So that little microcosm was great. But the longer I was there and the farther my reach went, the more I realized it was not coming from the top down. So the CEO was not operating according to values. He was operating against some of the values. And there was some really crazy stuff we found going on related to sexism and racism and stuff that was getting swept under the rug that was awful, even though my little team seemed happy. And so I like to ask people at every single level, I've heard such and such are the values. Maybe I would just pick one or two. I hear that putting the client first is one of your top values. I would love to hear how that is lived day to day. How does that fit into your policies and procedures? And especially right now, it's a really good barometer for things related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because everybody, after George Floyd was murdered, everybody's like, oh my God, we don't have a DEI program. We need one of those stat. And so they put stuff together. Some companies did the hard work of really putting some training together, addressing it, doing workshops, figuring out how to make it part of the day-to-day and how to make it part of policies. And other people just made a web-based training that you had to go and click through and take the quiz at the end, and that was their DEI program. And that's where it stopped. It's one thing if you start there and then you do some of the other stuff, but most companies just stop there, and it's actually more insulting. And so I like to hear, what are these things that you are doing day to day that embody values? That company that I worked for, where the values looked pretty good on paper, actually, and my team did well with them, the leaders would use them as a weapon. So passion was one of the values, and that's actually the one that, after leaving the Stockholm syndrome situation of working there for a few years, I actually don't like passion very much. I think purpose is better than passion, and kind of in general in life. But what would happen is certain values, if you expressed that you were getting burned out or tired of something, people would say, well, if you would just be accountable for this, or if you would just still had passion for that, you wouldn't be. It's awful. It's emotional intelligence is also used as a club by a lot of leaders and corporations, as is grit. So I don't like, I get really testy about how people talk about grit and emotional intelligence. I like to say that the most effective, the most talented people in terms of emotional intelligence are narcissists. So, because they know how to press buttons, they know how to read people, they know how to influence other people's emotions, but they use it for evil instead of for good. So basically asking questions about how are these values lived day to day, and where do they sit in policy and procedure and how you do work, is a really good way. Most places can't say it.
No, they can't.
They cannot say it. And I love working with people on it. And yeah, that's some of the best things. And then there's some other questions. You need to understand, a lot of times people ask questions like, well, do people, drag their feet and consider the quarterly team building outing as, is that a chore? Or is it something they look forward to? And that tells you a lot about their culture. And I say no. That actually tells you about their environment, which is equally important. But most of the snacks in the break room and free gym memberships and all of that stuff, those things can be really handy but very rarely do they actually tie to values. So that's why I like to divide culture, being the values and are you treated like a person, from environment, which covers things like fair pay. Is it a highly structured or a less structured environment? How flexible is it? And sort of in general, does this work with my life? You know, am I going to miss every one of my kids' soccer games because they're so strict about the time? It's fine. Everybody has different things that they like, but you have to know what it is that you want and then be willing to take some time to do some digging and figure out what's what. So.
And so often, because people have been trained to be nice, obedient individuals, because they've been beaten regularly for a good part of their life, this is part of being on the conveyor belt. You know,
Yes.
they become numb to the pain.
They're either numb or they're afraid. And there's a numb or afraid is very different from, you know what, that thing's just not that big of a deal to me. Yes. And I can tell the difference pretty quickly when I'm talking to someone. A really good example of how this plays out, it relates to compensation negotiation. So I think that it's a lot of fun to teach people about how to research, you know, market rate compensation, even if you don't get it as perfect as some HR compensation pros can get it. You can go a long way from, I don't know, to, oh crap, I'm $10,000 underpaid in a half hour online. And what happens is people are terrified to ask for an off-cycle raise to get them closer to market rate. They're afraid they're going to get fired, which rarely happens. And they also are terrified, many people are terrified to negotiate a job offer. And this year, I've made a little bit of a hobby of asking some recruiters and people leaders specifically about job offer negotiation. A key fear that people express is, if I ask for more pay or more, you know, vacation days or whatever it is in their comp package they want to change, I'm afraid they're just going to rescind the offer because I asked. And so the two questions I've been asking HR pros all year are, number one, how many offers do you all expect to have negotiated? Like, how many do you expect, prepare for? And the answer is 100%. For most people in corporate knowledge jobs, which are a little different than things like hourly pay if you go to work at a retail establishment or, you know, fast food, something like that is a little bit different. That's not the market I serve. But in a corporate knowledge job, which is what I mostly work with, salaried people, recruiters expect and think it's okay for 100% of people issued an offer to ask for more. That doesn't mean you're always going to get more. You might have to have a conversation, but it's not unusual.
And I'm going to differentiate between corporate recruiters and third party. The corporate recruiters have that expectation. The third party recruiters who are staring at a commission check, they're thinking, oh, be quiet, take the offer.
Well, that's bad third party recruiters. So yes, I'm with you on that. There's some bad third party recruiters, and I've worked and negotiated through both third party and through corporate recruiters in my own career, you know, 20 years in tech. The second question I asked is, when was the last time you saw an offer rescinded because someone tried to negotiate? And the answer, 100% of the people I've asked this question to, is never.
Never.
Never. Never. That doesn't mean people get everything they want. It doesn't mean every job is accepted. Sometimes you just straight up cannot come to terms. But never, from a 22-year-old straight out of school all the way up to executives, never. So negotiating for compensation, trying to improve your lot, it's okay. It's okay.
So true. So we're getting them moving off the conveyor belt. And yep. They're looking around, they're starting to explore other things, and they're hearing some stuff that's interesting to them, and now they're afraid. I might make the wrong decision. You know, I know what it's like to be a plow horse on this farm, but if I go to the next farm and, you know, I become a pony ride, like, what's going to happen to me? Ooh.
Yeah, that's a good one. Love that one. So, one of the things I take all of my job search clients through is a little tool I call a wants needs analysis. And so I've seen many other coaches that create a tool that's basically an offer comparer. So if I get an offer from Acme and an offer from XYZ, how do I compare those offers? They're usually compensation focused, and they're designed to tell you, do you take the offer from Acme or do you take the offer from XYZ? I take a completely different approach. In the wants needs analysis, I ask people to first fill out their deal breaker of what they need in a job. And that's related to compensation. It's related to culture. It's related to growth opportunity. And there's a whole list of various things that relate to my 4 sacred pillars of an ideal job. So I have them do that. And then I also have the dream. So it's like, what would the dream for that next role be? And I'm not talking about like be Elon Musk's right-hand man at Tesla kind of dream. I'm talking about, for the lane that you're in, what would be the dream? And so that's usually higher comp, better benefits, et cetera, and closer match to life purpose, or, more longevity or more training opportunities. A lot of people I work with are in tech. And so their deal breaker column will talk about, I at least need to get a contract job that makes this hourly rate so I can buy my benefits. It's that kind of thing. And I need them to not actively be racist jerks, but I don't necessarily need it to align to all my top life purpose, because I got to eat and live indoors. In the dream column, they might say, I want a full-time job. I would love for it to be at a high-growth fintech company where I could be in product management, make this much money, blah, 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 blah. So I have them do that early, ideally before they apply for a job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that way, every single job offer they get, they are comparing to their standards, not to each other, not to the current job that they have. A lot of times I have people go through this and I actually ask them to put what their current job gives them in there. I've had people realize, you know what, I don't like this boss. Maybe I need to transfer, to another team, but most of the other boxes are checked. And my way to get off the conveyor belt is to stop working for a guy that's a slave driver and go work for the good leader. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Your version of that list, I do a slightly different way. When I'm talking,
how do you do it?
What I do is I ask them very simply, what's most important to you in the next job or organization? What we need to see or hear or feel to believe it's the right choice for you.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to make up a list as long as you like. Don't edit, just put everything down, because once you have that list, I'm going to ask you to prioritize it on a scale focused on the first 10 items.
I like that. That's really cool.
And then from there, I take it one extra step. And I set it up like I did before about good behavior, about job hunters, and good behavior on employers.
Mm-hmm.
So given the fact that you're going to be on good behavior and so are they, what will you need to, and I'm looking at them from an NLP standpoint. So if they're a visual person, what are you going to need to see or hear or feel to believe it's the right choice for you?
Do you ask the negative too? Like, what are the things?
It depends on what they say. I don't want to guide to the negative. Sometimes if they're struggling, I'll ask them, what you don't like. So let's make that list up. And then once we have the negative, we can flip it to the exact opposite and know that it's probably somewhere between those two poles.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really good. And I do actually go through an exercise where I have them write about their job, but then I do have them do that concrete exercise. So there's a little bit of both. I had not thought of let's prioritize the top 10. I think a lot of it is because it's so clear. I usually don't. Once people get on this train, my clients seem like they're pretty clear about what the deal breakers are. And I encourage the shortest list of deal breakers possible. Like, you really need to know the difference between a true deal breaker and something that's a little bit off ideal. Since I work with so many people that are in tech or engineering type roles, they get really absolute really fast. And so I have to kind of if I sense that they have so many absolutes that they're not going to be able to actually find anything, then we got to kind of reel it in a little bit.
Okay, let's prioritize which are the real
Yeah,
absolutes
exactly.
and which are the minor absolutes.
Are you going to lose your house over that? You know, like if I work for an organization where there's rampant sexism, I will risk having to like take a roommate in order to make ends meet. I'm not going to be in that kind of organization, because if it's so embedded that I can see it, that means that it is everywhere. And, you know, I own my own business, but I wasn't in the C-suite when I was in corporate. I was not in a position to actually have power to change a racist culture. So within or a sexist culture. So that's my line in the sand. I don't do it. I'm not having it. But other people have different lines in the sand. So, but I ask questions like, would you scale back your life to beans and rice and take a roommate because of that? And I've never actually had people do that, but it changes how they think about stuff. So
it's a punch in the mouth and makes them pay attention, as opposed
exactly.
to being on script, which is,
yes,
I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. And they haven't really thought about it for a long time. But when you say, would you lose the house? Would you want your kid to drop out of school? Would you want to cut the cable bill? Or cut cable in order to do this?
And the degree to which you have to have these conversations is different for different situations. I actually work with a lot of people that their tendency is to hop from one conveyor belt to the other. So I work with a lot of high skill tech people. It's the kind of people that you hear, there just isn't, you know, data scientists and, you know, analytics engineers and stuff, where the problem isn't that 100 people applied for the job and you were one of 90 that got ghosted. The problem is that the job sits open for 6 months, not because the company's bad, but because there's just not that many people with those senior skill sets. And what happens is they're so in demand that when they get pissed and decide to leave, they never do any introspection. So they go from one crap environment to another crap environment that paid them 12% more. And that's one of the other things that I like to try to prevent. So if they sit for a minute and figure out what it is that I want, even if they only find 3 criteria instead of just my boss pissed me off last Friday for the last time, it improves their satisfaction in the next role. So
yeah, we've got so much more that we could cover, but
I know.
But, you know, we've already been on for a little over a half hour, and I don't want to do like a full hour. No disrespect. What haven't we covered yet that we really should?
The thing that we didn't cover yet is leader. So let me cover the leader pillar real quick. So every single employee engagement or retention related survey I've seen in the last 15 years cites one of 2 things as the top reason for people leaving. It's either lack of growth opportunity or crappy boss. So, and crappy boss takes all different forms. So when you think about leadership though, I want someone to think about their relationship with their current boss, which the key things are, does the management style mesh with yours? Are you treated with respect as a human instead of just a person that produces things? But I also want them to think about the leadership of the organization. Because you can work for a great boss in a company that cannot communicate a business strategy to save their life. And if you're working in an organization that doesn't have a clear business strategy that they are willing to share with all employees, you have at least one of 2 problems, potentially both going on. The first is that they don't have a strategy, which happens more than you think, even in larger companies. The second is that they don't think the peons need to know, they just need to do the work. And both of those things are no bueno for people that are trying to take their career seriously. So that's the leadership pillar.
And leaders complain about staff relentlessly. And it's sad, but you know, I start off with the premise that there's a statistic that says within 18 months of hiring someone, most leaders, most managers have buyer's remorse. So they regret the fact that they hired.
Because everybody's on their best behavior.
Right. It's part of the act. So job hunters have an act during the interview and are phony, but so are the employers. So everyone's mishired. Job hunters, the new employee, have the decision regret much earlier.
Yes, they know in a week.
Right.
I had a job where I knew the first day and I was still there 3 years later. Because I thought I could save it. But a thing that I like people to realize is you're buying just as much as the employer is. So you have your buyer's remorse and they have their buyer's remorse. It goes both ways. One of my favorite tactics is to be you in an interview. So if I'm really inquisitive and if I'm in an interview, I don't miss the offer very often. But occasionally I have, and I've had a couple of times where the feedback was I asked too many questions. It's like, well, I'm basically a 4-year-old. My whole thing is to ask why or to try to figure out why. So if you don't like that in an interview, awesome. We've saved ourselves a lot of pain.
And folks, if that is their reason for turning you down, congratulations.
Exactly.
You're off the conveyor belt. And they wanted to hire a sheep.
Yes. Or they just wanted to hire a doer. Yeah, they want to hire someone that'll shut up and color.
Right.
So
that's a fun way of doing it. I normally talk about the school system where we learn to shut up, do what we tell you to do when we tell you to do it, regurgitate a bunch of facts when we tell you to do it, or else. You won't get into the good school. You won't get the good job.
I won't get into Harvard and have $182,000 worth of student loans. Oh crap! Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I could have gone to Stanford and doubled that. Yeah.
Or I could have said, forget it and started a business, or gone in the army, or done whatever. There's so many paths.
So, folks, I'll just simply say, as you evaluate leaders, evaluate how they interview. Because if all they're doing is checking boxes, all they want is a commodity. If what they're looking for is a human being and they're trying to get to know you as a human being, there's some hope there. Not a guarantee, but there's hope there that you can suss out, one of my favorite phrases, suss it out to figure out whether this is someone you want to work for.
Yeah, there's one other thing that was a really good barometer for an interview. One of the people in my Facebook community shared the other day. And it is, do I feel like the whole purpose of this interviewer is to make me look like I'm dumber than him or her? So if during the interview they're trying to prove how smart they are and how smart you're not, red flag. That's just not cool, because they're going to do that every day for the rest of your life when you work for them.
Ugh. This has been fun, Diana. How can people find out more about you, the work you do, everything?
All the things. So I have a couple ways. One of my favorite ways to engage with people is in my Facebook community, which is called the Career Boss Crew, because I'm here to make you boss of your career. So if you go to careerbosscrew.com, it'll point you to my Facebook group and you can request to join. My website is dianaalt.com. And I have some freebie giveaway stuff. Yes, don't you love freebies? I have freebie giveaway stuff at dianateaches.com. So right now it's a resume don'ts handbook, and I'm planning to add some stuff later this year, but it's one of my favorite toys, stuff to not do on your resume.
Wonderful. Diana, thank you. So that's today's show. I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, here are a few things I can do to help you with your job search beyond simply being your coach. First of all, I've got a new book out called The Right Answers to Tough Interview Questions. It is like a cookbook with answers to tons of interview questions that you're going to be asked on interviews. And if you pair it up with my other new book, The Ultimate Job Interview Framework, they are a terrific pair of books to help you with interviewing. In addition, I have a new service where you can practice mock interviews. If you go to thebiggamehunter.us/mock, I've got a service there, very inexpensive, like $99, where we have mock interviews set up. I'm going to be adding more to it very soon, but you can record your answers to them, and then I can critique them and help you perform better on them. You probably have noticed my show notes are pretty thorough with products and services that can help you with your search. And connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/thebiggamehunter. Lastly, my website has a ton of great information. That's thebiggamehunter.us. Now, if you're not ready to go there and go through the blog, put the address in your phone, thebiggamehunter.us, Jeff Altman. So this way, when you're ready to go, you have a way of getting back to my website. Hope you have a terrific day, and most importantly, be great!